Welcome to Techthusiasm. We're in my theater for episode number 1 of my home theater building series. In this video, let's discuss pre-planning. So you think you want a dedicated theater space, and you may build it yourself or contract it out. But before you get into any particulars along the way, I want to talk about some guidance for high-level planning considerations before you even get started. Basically, you want to define some overall goals with regards to what you're trying to achieve with the space and the build, because these elements will drive very detailed decision making all throughout the stages of your project, and we'll refer back to the idea of these kind of fundamental goals throughout the series. So first and right off the bat is to define a not to exceed budget goal. Budget really rules everything, and it will totally define the distribution of your spending, whether you have what you need to actually do the project that you want. And it's crucial to manage your budget properly across all the things that you'll end up spending money on. Specifically as well, you want each individual part of your spending to be in balance with the other parts. If you lay out a $50,000 budget, you're probably not buying a $30,000 laser projector. You also don't want to drive $25,000 worth of speakers on a $200 receiver, or use an $8,000 set of separates for $1,500 speakers. Now, I was exaggerating a little bit there, but a home theater is a big project, and it has a lot of individual pieces that are going to cost you money. And you want to make smart choices with your budget allocation and keep the project in balance. In addition, you want to make sure you allocate appropriately to project items that might be around for a long time relative to other items that could be changed or upgraded on a shorter time horizon. For example, in some AV circles, you may hear the phrase date your projector but marry your screen. Projector technology changes a lot, and new models of projectors will come along steadily, but screens not so much. So system balance is one of the things that I feel very good about having achieved in my room. And the level of performance and relative cost of all of my stuff is well matched. For example, my speakers to my processing and amplification. Same for my screen and my projector. Having a high fidelity content source for a higher threshold of spending and a certain level of performance for equipment also makes more sense, like allocating budget perhaps for a Kaleidescape. So if you're going to DIY as well, you also need to think about what elements you might actually do versus what you might hire out. I was at my handyman limit such that I wasn't installing flooring when I wasn't sewing the custom curtains that we have in our room. However, I did demolition, drywall work, paint, and a bunch of other physical elements myself, which would have added a lot to the cost of the project if I had paid to have them done. I also deal shopped real hard for my equipment and found a tremendous amount of value in terms of what I paid for what I actually purchased. So after budget comes purpose. What are you building the room for? TV shows, movies, music, video games, sports, or something else? Think about what you plan to do the most and keep that on the top of your mind throughout the project. Then consider what additional breakdown you might have for using the room, even if you just make some ballpark ratios. For me, my room was very much built for movies, then video games, and anything else is pretty much a distant third. But as you go through the specific stages of the build, and particularly equipment selection, you'll inevitably find decisions that are influenced by the factor of what purpose do you want to use the room for. A video gamer cares about input lag measurements on a projector or a display. A movie watcher or music listener really does not. A sports-first environment might focus on motion handling or particularly brightness because you may be using the space with the lights on more than off. A movie focus is going to prioritize things like HDR processing. Someone that really cares about music first may make different decisions for audible quality versus visual quality as their priority, so it really matters. In my experience, a room that is designed and balanced nicely for one purpose, though, is generally going to perform pretty well for all of the other use cases too, but the distribution matters eventually in some level of detail in your project. So figure out what your usage goals are and recognize them as you go through the stages of your build. Another extension of purpose is to consider a question of who is the space serving? Is it just for you as an individual, you and a special someone, a full family, or multiple families and guests as well? Another top level goal is to define what kind of finish you want. Is this going to be a closed door dedicated room, or is it an open space that's going to integrate into a larger game area or bar area type of environment? Do you want to see your gear, or do you want a more ornate level of finish? Surely you care about performance when the lights are off, but what type of environment do you want to be in when the lights are on? And will you be spending any other time in your space besides using it with the display and the lights down? So I've received feedback that my room is somewhat raw. I don't have my speakers hidden behind an acoustically transparent screen. They're entirely out on speaker stands and of course the floor standing towers up front. My acoustical panels are all pretty nondescript flat black. They're not ornate and they don't have artwork or anything on them. My room is really kind of a black hole. But we don't spend any time in here if it's not to watch something. I personally like seeing the equipment around me. The room met my goals when the lights are off. Performance is awesome, balanced, and all the black hides everything away. I set my purpose for video-driven entertainment, movies and games, with a gear-intensive black finish, and I spent my money on lights out performance to my budget to maximize the value of what I spent. That said, I still created what to me is a very calm, cozy, and eye-pleasing aesthetic. Your aesthetic goal might be different. This is also a particularly important goal if you have a spouse or a significant other that you want enjoying the space with you. Take their aesthetics into mind and consider what kind of finishes and completion would be comfortable and inviting for them to come and want to spend time with you in your space. My last pre-planning thought, building from the discussion about your goals, is to get a paper napkin sketch set pretty early. Early on, you should have a reasonable assessment of what your dimensions are going to be, and this will also drive a lot. Dimensions will ultimately make a lot of decisions for you. For example, how much screen size you can get in a projection setup is really a direct function of your dimensions and your distance from your screen to your projector. Seating count is also a function of your goals, but also a derivative of your dimensions in your space too. If your room just physically doesn't have enough room to put in a second row, you're not going to have a second row. This was my case, for example, and it drove decisions to focus on one extra wide row and go with a couch instead of home theater chairs. So a paper napkin sketch on top of the other goals can also help define like how many speakers and subwoofers you may have room for and what other things you may decide to cut or compromise based on the availability and the usage of the space you have. You can also start forming a high-level idea here how much demolition or construction is going to be required. What do you have to take out? What do you actually have to build in? And start preparing questions for how are you going to get your cabling everywhere that it needs to go. You're going to need to get to all your speakers, to your projector, and so on. Again, at this level though, keep these items somewhat loose and pliable. It's more a list of flags and considerations at this point. And as we go through specific project elements in future videos, these goals and the basic structure of your plan will drive a lot of individual choices later on. The other thing I'd recommend is temper any impatience you have and consider these goals slowly and fully. Establish a solid foundation, a pre-plan for your project now. And remember that it really is just an entertainment thing. Take your time and do it right, but be honest with your budget and your plan. This isn't something worth compromising your finances and such for. So thanks so much. Please ask any questions you have in the comments and look for future home theater building series content on the channel. I'm going to make a whole bunch of videos going deep in detail on a ton of elements of what it took to put my room together. So please like, subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications. Thanks.